Now we're fully powered. Fragments of silicon.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, are Petty and Golix. Right, let us get to the news, as it is. Petty, why don't you start us off this week?
Overall, it's been relatively quiet. I got new glasses, though, so hooray! They're a little bit different of a prescription than my prior ones, and unfortunately, they're also a little bit bigger than even the glasses case the shop provided me, so I need to go look for a new case for them, which is kind of dumb that they sell glasses that are too big for the cases they carry, but I only deal with this once every 2 years. I got my second shot in my knee, which this one hurt a little more than the previous one, so I guess we'll see what happens with the third and final one. And unfortunately, my knee braces were delayed a couple weeks, so I'm now getting those at the end of March, which kind of sucks.
Did they say why?
Delay with manufacturer.
Mm.
So, your guess is as good as mine. As far as games go, I actually picked up Devil May Cry 5 because it was on sale for like $5, or not $5, $10 with the Virgil DLC, so I figured, why not?
Like,
It's...
I mean, were you expecting an actual answer to that?
Not really. It's just kind of fun, so... what else is on sale? Like, I don't know if I want to get Monster Hunter on PC, because I have the Switch version, though I know the PC version actually has mods. Like,
well, I mean, which Monster Hunter is on sale?
Rise. Because the only thing I don't like that wasn't carried over from World on the Switch version is the like button layout that says what button does what action next. So since they changed some of the actions, I'm like, how do I do this again? So I guess it's something that I'll have to figure out if I want to get or wait on that.
Okay.
Since it's probably going to go on sale again during the summer sale. And, yeah, other than that, I guess the only thing that's kind of been frustrating is I'm still waiting to hear back on getting the prescription for my new CPAP machine. I don't know if we're waiting on my sleep doctor's office entire incompetence, or insurance is being a bunch of assholes. So that's fun. I guess next.
Well, Golix, it's your go.
Well, I'm back in the office this week because of I'm negative on COVID and stuff.
I was about to say you no longer have the plague.
Yeah, on Tuesday we had a snow day, so I was home working from home anyway. And then after dinner, one of the trees in our shared yard with our neighbor broke a rather large limb and knocked out the power and they just got it back at like 2 p.m. this afternoon, and I was very concerned that it would be longer than that. So I did not sleep good last night. Long power outages suck. It wasn't like even heavy snow, it was actually mostly the wind that picked up that did it, but... So I'm readjusting to the fact that I don't have to dread being at home. Because even though we have a generator, that's just for, like, cooking and heating. Not recommended to, like, use your computer and stuff. Even though, thankfully, it didn't knock out the internet connection, aside from the fact that there was no power.
It was one of those, if you had, like, modem and router with batteries fall over, you would have been fine.
Well, aside, I also have a desktop, so... I mean, I have
like,
a laptop,
phone-wise,
too, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, I could use my phone, because I used it with, what's the name? Wi-Fi, or with just data, but it still wasn't super fun. I ended up going to bed early, but I didn't sleep well. But yeah, that kind of is occupying most of the space in my brain right now still, so... That's where we are.
Okay, anything else?
I think that's all.
All right. This is my go. Well, let's see. I had the follow-up with my primary care physician yesterday, and it was pretty useless. Like, he said he wants to see how I'm doing in 2.5 months before referring me to GI. So
I guess kind of understandable.
I mean, never mind. I was in his office like a month ago about constipational issues, but whatever. Like, the meds that the hospital provided. I took my last today, so what happens in the days ahead? It's like hopefully things stay, not clogged or whatever.
And this was also to get another referral to the hand surgeon, I think.
I didn't bring it up. Like, it's like if I need to, I'll bring it up. I mean, the noxious stimuli still shows up, but it's nothing major. Truth be told. So, and plus, I think I really need to see more a neurologist than a hand surgeon, because I feel the stimuli more than just the hands. It's weird. So, but neuropathy can be weird, I suppose.
Yeah.
And in terms of gaming, honestly, the games of the week have been occupying most of my time. So much so that I moved on from Curse of the Moon 2, because Ezra's Wheel of Fortune is longer and more involved than I was expecting. At least, like, I also got news that my uncle is coming up next month. And unfortunately, since he and his wife are retired now, that's in the middle of the week. So I had to delay the return of our programming a fucking week. Is that? something that was out of my hands. So yeah, when we go, so when Fragments goes on break, it'll be for 3 weeks, and MSP is going to be on break for 5 weeks. Not much I could do there.
Yeah, I mean, worst case if anything, if I can think of something, I can always stream on what would be the return day, but...
And if Mac wants to do something for that week, that's up to him. I don't think so. Like he's usually pretty swamped. So, yeah, that's where the news lies this week. So normally we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast, and joining us semi-frequently is John from MangaGamer.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back again.
Always good to have you. Right then, let's see. So, in terms of releases, right, I believe you mentioned that this time around you wanted to talk about Rants 9.
Yeah, so since the last time releases, we have released Rants 9. We have Onmyoji, Nightmare Onmyoji, which I think we talked about last time, maybe. That's actually releasing next week, so...
I don't remember if we talked about Nightmare or not.
Okay.
But...
and just yesterday, we finally announced the pre-orders for LKYT.
All right, so I suppose we'll get into all that, starting with Rants 9. Now, we have talked about the Rant series before, and trying to remember if this or Rants... Is this the last one, or is that Rants 10?
Rants 10 is the final one.
Okay. So what's going on in Rants 9?
So in Rants 9, the Hellmanian Empire, which was showcased in one of the previous games, in the background, while the others last few Rants games have been going on, the Empire has sort of fallen into decay under a corrupting regime, and it's sort of poised on the verge of collapse, where either like a civil war or an invasion could happen and could potentially take it down. But one of the few men that Rance actually got along with in the previous games of the series is from that empire, and he very much wants to, even though he's been exiled from the empire, he very much wants to sort of reclaim the empire and restore it to its former glory. And so he comes to Rance and asks for Rance's assistance, and so Rance willingly comes in to start taking down the entire country.
And is this one of the strategy titles, or is this one of the dungeon crawling titles?
So I would, it is a bit more of your RPG, but it's very much sort of like it's that turn-based strategy RPG. So it's not like Sengoku Rance, where it's like army versus army. But I would say if you're familiar with like Uraware Rumono or games like that, the gameplay might feel similar. Like that, or Growlands, there would be another one.
Langenster?
Yeah, it sounds about right. I don't think I played that one myself, but Yeah, so like you have a 3D map and you have tiles, skills and actions and attacks can, affect certain distances, certain enemies.
Right.
Positioning matters, movement on the battle map matters. It also has sort of base building system as well, where you have your own sort of castle that you manage and develop. And I think it's later on in the game you can actually like take it and deploy it on missions as well.
Hmm. And this is always kind of awkward to bring up, but what sort of sexual escapades does Rance get up to in this one?
Various escapades and lots of them. It is Rance.
Of course, but it's like it's kind of half the reason people come to this series.
No, that's true. Like, I wouldn't expect any like extreme. I wouldn't expect any extreme fetish content from the Rance series. You'll probably see some light bondage, like some light fetishes like that, and obviously, Rance himself tends to be a little aggressive, so you can also expect scenes that are a bit more of that dominant nature.
Of course. How would this compare to other entries? Like, I always wonder about that. Like, you know, is it if in terms of like the sex scenes, is it if you've played one Durant's game, you've played them all, or do they have accoutrements, or however the fans of the series differentiate on that level?
I mean, there's always like there's different heroines between each games. Like there's some of the heroines continue over and are repeated, but each one generally has new heroines that get added to the collection of women that France has had associations with. There's
And do any of those characters from previous titles show up in this one?
So some of the big ones from previous titles are going to be Kanami, Shizuka, and Senhime.
Okay. I can't say I'm too familiar with the heroines of France.
Yeah. So Senhime would be from Sengoku Rance. Shizuka is, I believe, from France 5 or 6. And Kaname being from Liazas, I believe, is coming in from 6 as well.
Okay. And let's see. Trying to think of anything else to cover in terms of the Rance series overall. Kind of drawing a blank here. Like, suppose, have you secured Rance 10 yet?
Yeah, the translation for that is already well underway.
Okay. And are there any other side games in the Rance series that you have yet to cover?
So we have there's there's Rance 03, which is the remake of the third Rance. We have licensed that one, and we are working on that one. So aside from that, which will be released sometime soon, I presume sometime between now and when 10 comes out. The only other Rants would be Rants 4, but I don't think Alisoft ever did an actual remake for that one, so I'm not sure if that will ever be a thing.
Let me guess. It was made for like the PC 98 or something.
I think that was that one might have actually been 95. I think it was, or maybe it was. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. Okay, yeah, that was the last one released on PC 98. It was just released in 1993, so that's what was throwing me off.
A lot of 90s in there.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Do they have the capacity to do that these days?
I mean, so I know Alisoft, like I think they released a version of 4 that people could download for free on their website, but it's not a remake. It's basically the original. It's just a playable version of the original PC 98 game.
Right.
And obviously that one's in Japanese only.
How curious.
Yeah. And maybe one day they'll do it, but that it all depends on Alisoft.
I suppose. So, anyway, I suppose we should shift forward to Nightmare Cross Omiyoji.
Onmyoji, yeah.
All right, so what's this one about?
So this is the sequel to Nightmare Sisters. After the nuns were rescued from the cult of demons that, gang raped them and used them to make more demons, they were eventually rescued and have moved on to a new city where people are being possessed and kidnapped, and there they work with this Onmyoji Kuon to try and stop the cult, defeat the cult. And very much like the first game, that doesn't go so well at first.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of animated sex scenes, lots of sex scenes with multiple men, and that is probably the main draw.
Now, when you say animated, like, are there actual frames of animation in here, or?
Yes.
Okay. I know some things that claim to be animated, it's just kind of more a slideshow than anything else. And like, how elaborate of an animation are we talking about here? Like full CG or something less than that?
I would say it's more or less like that. It's more that the CGs have motion to them.
Okay. And once again, always a bit awkward to get to the sexual questions, but they must be asked. So how hardcore does this one get?
I mean, all the sex scenes are very explicit, and you have several scenes with numerous nameless men.
I'm like, I can imagine it.
Yes, there are many a train run on these girls.
Like, well, not the worst thing when it comes to the hentai. The worst is when it's the ugliest men imaginable. Never got that. I'm like, if you've seen enough hentai, you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, you have with hentai, there's a really sliding scale of worst.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sitting here flipping through the promo CG for the game just to try to remind myself, and I'm not seeing any faces on any of the guys in the CG.
Which is an indication of how important they are, i.e., not very. Like,
yeah, no, it's the heroines and the heroines getting
railed.
railed is very much the focus.
Yes. And is this a choice-based visual novel? Is this a like, do you pick a heroine kind of visual novel here, or is it just you play through the story kind of deal?
This one is very linear. I think there's one or two choices to give some minor variations to the scenes and the outcomes, but yeah, otherwise it's a fairly linear title.
Hey, fair enough. I do think we might have talked about this last time. I suppose it doesn't really matter. And it's supposed to come out next week.
Yep, March 23rd.
And how much will this be costing?
It's $30, but you can get 10% off if you pre-order it.
Any pre-order bonuses?
The 10% off.
Okay. And let's see. And you mentioned that you had a new announcement. What, just yesterday?
Yeah, we just announced it yesterday.
Yeah.
It is LKYT, which is our next Boys Love our yaoi title. That will be releasing on April 20th.
So is that supposed to be an acronym, or?
Yeah, the title LKYT very much is an acronym. What it stands for is revealed after you clear the game the first time.
Huh. But it does stand for something.
Very much so.
Okay. Because I know there are some, not just games, but there are some entities that just have an acronym that don't stand for anything. They just want to have an acronym that spells out something. And I mean, clearly this spells out, lit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they worked backwards to get what it stands for.
You get that too, which is how you.
Well, it's LKYT, not LYKT. Trust me, even our staff make the error of mispronouncing it as licked because of that, but it is LKYT.
There are acronyms that are pronounced with letters transposed.
I mean, given well, I suppose I should ask, is this an adult title or is this more all ages?
So this is very much an adult title. It's developed by the studio Parade, which is Clock Up's BL brand, the same company that developed No Thank You, Room Number 9. It's directed by the same director responsible for No Thank You and Room Number 9. The main scenario writer is the same author that worked on both No Thank You and Maggot Baits. So it is a very dark and somber drama and romance. It is so it's set in sort of fantasy Japan during feudal times. The characters live in a city on the outskirts of Shoreline Nation, bordering the wastelands that are home to the corruption and these vicious monsters called hollows that every 1,000 years or so sort of swarm forth, trying to kill and consume all plant and animal life. And the people who live in this village are charged with defending the borders and the rest of humanity from this looming scourge. And even though the last one happened only a few centuries ago, there have been signs that it might be coming again and might be coming earlier than expected. And so the main character is sort of thrust into this battle to save the world, and the people of the nation are able to use a sort of magic to power their abilities to fight. But in order to enhance the spiritual energy that allows them to do this, they have to form a spiritual bond with one another. And so, in order for the bonding ritual to be successful, both parties involved need to have a close relationship, complete trust in one another, and be able to sort of open their hearts fully to one another in order to sort of reach the max potential of the enhancement that the bond can provide to their spiritual powers.
Mhm.
And so in LKYT, there are 4 different romantic interests that the main character, Tusk, can pursue as a potential partner for this spiritual bond. Needless to say, as the yaoi title, everyone involved in this is male.
Right. Right. And, once again, how explicit does this one get?
Dicks go in holes. I don't know what else you want me to say about that. No. Yeah, I don't think the sex scenes get as dark as they do in, say, Maggot Baits, but there are a few characters in this game that are quite vile.
Define vile.
We were discussing it. We were worried about whether or not the game would get approved for Steam. It did eventually get approved, so it will be releasing on Steam. But yeah, one of the characters talks about in his past that he shoved sticks up women and men just to hurt them.
I'm like, yeah, that could raise some red flags.
So, yeah. Obviously, that's not the main character. That's more one of the villains. But it is just to give you an idea. It's like this is not necessarily. This is a game that very much has those kind of dark elements to it.
Okay. And is this one of those visual novels where you have to play through all 4 scenarios in order to get the true final ending, as it were?
I don't believe so. Yeah. It does have the 4 distinct character routes, so.
Neat.
Yeah.
And I suppose finally I'll ask you about this because the Epic Game Store has recently opened itself up to self-publishing. Now I know one of the caveats there is porn games, but I do know you do have a catalog of all ages titles. So ultimately, the question here is: have you looked into bringing any of your visual novels to the Epic Game Store yet?
That's a very recent development, so we have not yet started exploring that option. But it is good to know, and I probably one we will be looking into in the coming days to see whether or not it will be viable.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And let's see. Anything else you wish to announce or talk about at this stage?
We covered LKYT, so that is the big one. People trying to find us at conventions. Our first convention of the year will be Anime Central, I think, and then we'll also have Anime Expo.
Okay. Right then. So let me see. Next time we can have you on is on May 31st.
Okay.
Okay.
Seems good.
All right. So until then, John, as always, was lovely having you and hearing about your latest products. And as always, you can either get these visual novels on Steam or much more likely on the MangaGamer website.
Yep. And if you're trying to look it on Steam, make sure you change the settings to let yourself see the adult titles if you are able to.
Yeah. Right. Penny, play us the next segment. All right. So welcome to the topic of discussion. I guess we could have picked Burger Time, as it turns out, because not just an hour ago it got the Game Boy version of Burger Time got announced, but no, no, we are not talking about Burger Time. We are talking about the original Donkey Kong trilogy. We were talking about old school arcade games mainly because of our recent review of the game Dodo, a modern game that was done in the style of games like Burger Time and Donkey Kong, and kind of landed on Donkey Kong because there was more to talk about there. And also that was on the Nintendo Switch Online. Anyway, so the original Donkey Kong game. Two of them are certified Stone Cold classics of the, golden age of arcade. The other is Donkey Kong 3. You may not even know Donkey Kong 3 exists. Or if you do, you may not have positive memories of it. I'm starting Donkey Kong 3 because, honestly, Donkey Kong 3 is the one that's by far the least talked about.
For reasons.
Yeah. The big reason is Donkey Kong 3 failed. I don't think we have any sort of sales statistics or hard data of that nature to really show how bad Donkey Kong 3 cratered numerically. But there are other ways you can tell that Donkey Kong 3 froze the franchise dead. First of all, number of ports. Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. saw an array of ports to an array of systems. Keep in mind, those games were licensed out before the NES was a thing. And also not the only Nintendo games to see a wide array of ports. See also Mario Brothers and Popeye. Those are the four games of Nintendo's classic arcade days that really saw a lot of traction on, pretty much every system that was alive at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Donkey Kong 3, that only got a port to the NES, as far as I remember. But you could also make the argument that, maybe this was a little later on and Nintendo was a bit more selective of the licensing. The other big tell is the fact that Donkey Kong, outside of like Donkey Kong Jr. Math, and maybe the Donkey Kong Classics re-release, pretty much disappeared from the Nintendo landscape for a decade. Donkey Kong 3, I believe, came out in 1983, and then you had the twin push of Donkey Kong 94 / Donkey Kong on the Game Boy and Donkey Kong Country in 1994.
Well, they had clearly at this point also run out of related ideas of where to take the franchise. The first game is Mario must save his girlfriend from Donkey Kong. The second game is Donkey Kong's kid must save Donkey Kong from Mario. And then the third game is some guy who is not Mario needs to shoot bug spray up Donkey Kong's butt for reasons.
Right. And that is another thing that really dislocates Donkey Kong 3. Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. do tell a tale. Donkey Kong Jr. flips the script, but is definitely a logical continuation of the Donkey Kong saga. I know this is weird to talk about, but when Donkey Kong comes up in conversation, it's not just lauded for its gameplay or its design or things of that nature. It's lauded for its story. Because it has one, a definitive beginning, middle, and end, which was downright revolutionary for a 1981 arcade game.
Mm-hmm.
Where even the basics were revolutionary. The video gaming was that early along. Just keep in mind that Pac-Man had came out the year before and invented characters, more or less, for video games. Again, not even joking. Like, Pac-Man's the first video game mascot. Like, the ghosts are, they're like the first definable video game antagonists. Obviously, there are going to be some exceptions and such here or there, but, we're talking for the masses. Before that, you have, space invaders, and asteroids, and things get even more, obviously things would advance pretty quickly in the years ahead. That's how nascent we're talking about in terms of video games. And also the Donkey Kong games are renowned for, changing up the formula, which is which was always a bold maneuver. Especially, even back then, you did have video game sequels that were basically more of the same, like Breakout to Super Breakout, Asteroids to Asteroids Deluxe, and so on and so forth. Like Donkey Kong Jr., and Donkey Kong 3 are all very different, very delineated. So clearly Nintendo didn't want to do a Donkey Kong game without fresh ideas as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also just, Donkey Kong 3 did not click with audiences. I think that can definitively be said. from a number of parameters.
I mean, it says something that I don't even remember the name of the guy.
Once again, it's Stanley.
Okay. See, he has there's Mario, and then there's Fix-It Felix, which is a relatively modern knockoff of Mario, and then there's a void of charisma, and then Stanley is somewhere down there.
I'm like, I guess that's one way of putting it. But yeah, getting back to the Donkey Kong 3 conundrum, you have Donkey Kong in a greenhouse for seemingly little reason. That was the thing about Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. Motivation. These games are not telling complicated stories, but they're still telling a story with a background. Donkey Kong kidnaps Mario's girlfriend Pauline. Mario must go rescue the girl. I mean, it's a plot line Mario would recycle to the present day, quite honestly.
Albeit usually with less monkeys.
Yes. At least 30% less.
And we are using monkey here in the general term that includes most non-human primates. Primates.
Yeah, technically speaking,
he's a gorilla, which is an ape.
Yeah, he's an ape. Monkeys are the ones with tails, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, and that's why Diddy Kong. Well, yeah, and that's why Diddy Kong is not related to Donkey Kong.
Right. But anyway, and in Donkey Kong Jr., Mario, as revenge for the kidnapping, decides to lock Donkey Kong up, and I think he's in charge of its circuits in this one. I forget if that was part of the plot or it was just, gauging for the revenge. Anyway, point is Donkey Kong Jr. has to go and free Dad. Once again, simple motivations, but motivations nonetheless. Donkey Kong 3, you got Donkey Kong in a greenhouse and he's agitating bugs because... No, seriously, why? Why is Donkey Kong here?
Also, why is it a problem that he's here?
Well,
I mean, yes, I know the natural habitat of the gorilla is not inside not inside a greenhouse, but he didn't kidnap anyone this time.
Yeah. Well, it's also because Donkey Kong is spurring up the insects. He deliberately goes and hits the hives that rile up the insects. And, he's not eating them, which is a thing that monkeys and primates actually do, by the way. Stanley's trying to stop Donkey Kong more incidentally because of the bugs that will eat his flowers. Yeah, even for the golden age of arcades, this doesn't make too much sense. Also, the gameplay can be described as more of a shmup than anything else. More of a shmup. Pretty
in that you're at the bottom of the screen and are shooting up as you move left and right.
Yeah. Which is pretty different than the platforming action of both Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. It's there's not as much to say in Donkey Kong 3 as there is on the other two Donkey Kong games. And a lot of that has to do with its historical non-importance. I mean, you can bring up that it basically iced the Donkey Kong franchise for a decade, but Donkey Kong made a pretty stirring recovery in the long run. I guess that might be how you feel about Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong was going to have to evolve one way or another, and he sort of did evolve one way and the other with Donkey Kong and, Donkey Kong 94, which became basically the Donkey Kong versus Mario series. That's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, and that's a I think we've covered this before, but it's kind of an important thing because while it is still a version of Donkey Kong, they actually gave it a whole bunch more levels.
Yeah,
there's a lot more to Donkey Kong 94 than there is to the original,
which was actually pretty standard operating procedure on the Game Boy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of so-called ports of arcade games that are actually complete remakes. Burger Time Deluxe, Lock and Chase for the Game Boy is a completely new game. Oh, even down to a Yankee-O Alien for the Game Boy. Anyway, in terms of Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., so at least in terms of Donkey Kong, I'm probably going to say something perhaps a bit controversial, maybe even bold. But I don't think Donkey Kong holds up all that well. Or that is to say, it was a fine game in its time. It's not really worth playing in the here and now. Or even
there's not a lot to it, no.
It's not just that there's not a lot to it. But this is what I was talking about in the Donut Dodo review. The actual gameplay of Donkey Kong, the original Donkey Kong, feels very freaky.
Oh yeah, it's stiff as heck.
Yeah, stiff jumps, very unforgiving. I think Donkey Kong Jr. is a lot.
Remember that one thing that came up recently about part of the reason why Billy Mitchell's Donkey Kong run was proven to be fraudulent or whatever was because he was using a arcade thing with a replaced joystick that allows you to input diagonals.
Right.
Which means input a vertical and horizontal direction at the same time.
But, and in that regard, I think Donkey Kong Jr. has the best gameplay. And don't get me wrong, Donkey Kong Jr. can play a bit on the stiff side as well, but it's a lot less stiff than Donkey Kong 1 is.
Mm-hmm.
At least from what I remember. No, it's just, you're not getting the fluidity of Donut Dodo. No,
it's still a little bit stiff, but the ability to shift between climbing two-handed or one-handed on things, gives you some options that the original one doesn't have.
Yeah, and that's really the thing that set Donkey Kong Jr. apart from Donkey Kong.
I forget though, Junior does still have the thing where you fucking fall if you fucking die if you fall your height, does it?
Yeah, but I
know it's kind of standard, but it still pisses me off.
Yeah. I mean, games weren't that unrelenting yet. Unfortunately.
Right.
But, like I said, Donkey Kong Jr. is probably the one most worth playing in terms of pure gameplay. the other real big dint against Donkey Kong is because Donkey Kong 94 exists. And I'm pretty sure that's going to come to the Virtual Console at some point, or the Nintendo Switch Online, and that's pretty much the definitive Donkey Kong experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
because it is just a Game Boy Color game.
Well, no, it's not. Like, it's actually a Super Game Boy game.
Oh, right. Sorry, I had it. You know what? I remembered that it had fucking special color things, and my brain just assumed it was a little later than it was, even though it's in the name.
Yeah. Yeah, at least in the Japanese name. It's just called Donkey Kong over here. But they called it Donkey Kong 94 in Japan, which, once again, is the right way of doing things.
Because in fairness, they call it Donkey Kong 94 here. That's just not what's in the fucking documentation.
Yeah, they called it Donkey Kong, and this is why people thought it was just a remake of, just the original Donkey Kong game. Stop doing this, publishers.
Especially when you're adding literally, I believe, 97 more. Like, the original Donkey Kong has 3 levels. Donkey Kong 94 has 100 levels.
Yeah, no. The original Donkey Kong has 4 levels. It's just the...
4? I thought it was 3.
No, the Cement Factory
right.
level. Yeah, that's the one that usually got cut for home releases. Usually for memory reasons. Not every home release back in the day, but most of them. Like, I want to say it was like the Atari 800 version that had the Cement Factory. Sometimes called the Pie Factory, but it's not a pie factory, it's a cement factory. Remember, construction, girders.
I don't know about you, all of my construction projects involve copious amounts of pie.
Yeah, like, what center are you living in?
Anyway, I think that'll about conclude this discussion on Donkey Kong. And indeed, do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Let's see. So coming up on the week ahead, we'll be having somebody from CGA Studio. I don't think they've quite worked out who yet. We'll be talking about Retro Formula World Tour, which is the sequel to Retro Formula One Racing, which I believe we reviewed here a few years back. Was on Kickstarter recently. Let's see. And coming up on Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Ultra C, Spellforce Conquest of Io, Red Horizon, and Frontier Hunter Ezra's Wheel of Fortune. Well, sorry, those are impressions because it's an early access title. But anyway, and we do have the season finale of Moonhawk Studios Presents coming up in half an hour. Sans guest because I got hit with the last minute. Oh, hey, sorry, we can't make it due to reason X, Y, or Z. Probably more on that on MSP.
It would be nice if they told you in advance more.
Yeah, but this is one of those things. Like, I got the message. It was they got hit at the last minute, so we got hit at the last.
Like, fair enough. It's still annoying.
Yes. Right. Until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.